Welcome back to the Habit Based Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ewell. Today, we got a very special guest, DL Walker.
You are tuning in to the Habit Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewell. This is the Habit Based Lifestyle. Let's go.
She's a natural foot and ankle. She does natural foot and ankle therapy. She's a corrective alignment therapist and for foot and ankle dysfunction. And then she also teaches online programs that empower people to heal themselves. So DL, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Hey, thanks, Jesse. Thanks for
Well, that's quite the introduction of all the things you're doing.
Yes.
Give us kind of a brief just scenario of like where you're at today. And then we'll kind of go back to what got you started in this.
Yeah, thank you. Because where I am today could be very different than where I was, a month ago, a week ago. Life comes about. And I think where I am exactly at the moment is understanding that a human being is not a body part, that just looking at the foot, which is not what I do. Because again, I believe fully in a comprehensive, functional, holistic model. Okay. So there are multiple reasons that anyone can have a particular problem going on. And the idea is to really take a look at the possibilities of each one of them and or the combination of which in order to get someone better, not just temporarily, but permanently. Sure. So that they don't have to have problems down the road. And what I found as a physical therapist is that we were only treating one body part. In fact, insurance only allowed us to treat one body part. You would need another prescription to treat something else, even though that other factor was causing the dysfunction. So, for example, you had just mentioned that you have flat feet. Yeah. And there could be 4 structural reasons for that. So the idea is if I just gave you orthotics, I'm not fixing anything. I'm not resolving anything. I'm giving you something to make you more comfortable, but that doesn't mean down the road, because of those flat feet, that your knees aren't going to get trashed, your hips aren't going to get trashed, your back's not going to get trashed, all because of your feet. And similarly, when there are individuals who have knee and hip and back problems, oftentimes the foot is the culprit because it's all about the base. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the thing is, what I'm going through personally right now is sadly a revisitation of something that happened about 20 years ago with my teeth.
Okay.
And rather than looking at the root cause of the issue and resolving that, which I personally feel is the alignment of my teeth, because that is very much the crux of my work, is to restore alignment. The alignment in my teeth is not good. Okay. And so not only did I have an initial problem, but then the treatment to that problem failed. Then the treatment to the treatment of the problem that failed was complicated. And now I have the same problem in a different tooth.
Wow. Okay.
Had I addressed the root cause of that problem 20 years ago or 25 years ago, after it happened, and in my defense, I did not know that that was the root cause.
Sure.
And at this point, I am not a dentist or a dental expert. I'm just going by what I know in the body everywhere else. And since the teeth are a part of the body, I believe that all those things, all those principles that I'm very, very familiar with, resonate there as well.
Well, hold that thought for a second. So you said you didn't know, but did the person actually treating you know? Because that's kind of the other thing, right? Is sometimes the people we're working with, they don't even know. They're used to treating the symptom.
I agree with you.
So that's something that kind of plays a role in, PT world, personal training world, all these worlds, is like some doctors, some therapists are 100% committed to treating the symptom.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're telling me is you're 100% committed to treating the root cause,
And the
which is
symptom.
and the symptom. Well, you start at the symptom, but then you trace to the root cause and you
Yeah.
put it together. But like what I'm saying is like a lot of people don't know the
No.
difference of the two. And that's kind of like what you're saying is like, hey, I didn't know. Otherwise, I probably would have fixed it, but you don't
No
know
one
what you
told
don't
me.
know. And a lot of times the dentists, the doctors, the therapists, they're just
Yeah.
doing what they learned, you know?
Right.
And so what's cool is that I kind of want to bring this back full circle is what you actually do is you fix, you know, the root cause issues and that's what you're a specialist in. Is that correct?
Yeah. It really is. It really is. Thank you.
Okay, so take me back to like, you know, I talked to you a little bit before is like 14 years old,
Mm-hmm.
you began to kind of like, you know, do so like you started talking
I had a
about
problem. I had a
yeah,
problem. And the problem that I had, oddly enough, was warts on my fingers.
okay,
Seven, 7 out of 10 of them. So
okay,
it was bad. I was young. I was 14, and I went to a dermatologist who, did the treatment, the conventional treatment. So liquid nitrogen. So tried burning them off, tried cutting them out, even tried Spanish fly, and it was extraordinarily painful, and it didn't work. And as luck would have it, family friend referred me to a chiropractor and once again, you think chiropractor for warts, but why would you do that? And what he did was he looked at my diet. He looked at he did treat the symptoms. So he used low level laser, which
okay.
was not painful. He did adjustments. He did some sort of detoxification. And within 3 months, they were gone, never came back.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
so I really understood at a very young age the importance of comprehensive healthcare.
Okay.
And what I call the philosophy that I use is I term it the kitchen sink philosophy, which
Okay.
means that when there is a symptom going on for me, like right now, is that I throw everything that I know at it.
Got it. Okay. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. And so I do that with my patients also,
So it
looking
kind of
into
sounds like you go
that.
into research mode. You're going to research everything. And then
Right.
out of it, you're going to come up with a
Right.
solution.
Yes. Yeah. And in doing so, I have been very successful, as well as being highly intuitive, which helps to maintain my own health and also protect the health of the clients that I work with.
That's really cool. Okay. So 14 years old, you go
Mhm.
kind of have this experience. When did you know you wanted to be a therapist or you wanted to kind of progress into that field?
Yeah. When I was 16, I kind of wanted to be a sportscaster. A
Okay.
really big fan of sports,
Nice.
particularly the Olympics. And
Okay.
then for some reason, physical therapist came to mind. So I was a volleyball player. My coach, my assistant coach, was a physical therapist. And I went to work with her one day and just kind of fell in love with the field because I really gain a lot from helping people.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and so that's why I got involved with physical therapy, and then really took that to a high level.
Yeah,
Where
so let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about before we go, you know,
Uh-huh.
high level
Yeah.
early on, what were things you liked about physical therapy and then what were things
Mhm.
you didn't like?
Right. Well, I lasted in my first job. I digress a little bit because it took me um about 9 years to get into physical therapy school. So I wound up with a Bachelor of Science in Fitness and Cardiac Rehab and a master's in Exercise Physiology.
Nice.
Then I went to PT school, and I lasted in that first job a year and a half.
Okay.
before I got fired. And the reason that I got fired, I was never really given the reason, but it was not, at the time, it did not upset me because I was only being able to treat people for 15 minutes. I was only treating the symptoms. I did a good job. I made the practice money, but I wasn't really satisfied. So after that, I went into business for myself, and for 10 years worked with patients in their homes in New York City.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
where I could spend about an hour with them.
Okay.
And then I honed my profession and got certified as a functional manual therapist with a group called the Institute of Physical Art.
Okay.
And they are, I would say, out of, well, not all of them, but out of the physical therapy continuing eds, I would say that they are one of the more holistic group,
Okay.
but it is manual therapy.
When you say holistic,
Mhm.
like, I mean, I know what that means, but like
Yeah.
somebody listening in, what does that mean for somebody?
Well, from a physical therapy standpoint, they were open to the mindset aspect of recovery. Um,
Okay.
you know, understanding differences with regard to more so the mental aspect, the body-mind connection.
Okay.
And 2 years ago, I became certified in an energetic healing modality that I use also. So
Okay.
now I'm feeling the whole body mind energy connection. And when an individual is not progressing, the problem is not being diagnosed properly. The root cause
Sure.
is not being diagnosed properly.
Yeah,
And
no, that's great. So if you were saying that to someone who might be listening,
mhm,
does that mean, what does that mean to that person? Like, because we're talking about your teeth.
mhm,
Like, if you had that intuition of like, hey, I'm not getting better, how do I identify that? And then how do I know that it may be not
mhm.
this issue? Because a lot of times I think people have injuries, they do traditional modalities, they don't get better, and then they don't know what to do. And so,
Yeah. And a lot of them will wind up in surgeries that again are just treating the symptoms of the issue. And those surgeries may or may not work either.
yeah, and that's kind of
Yeah.
the medical reactive model of healthcare.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're in the
Proactive.
proactive model of healthcare. And so there's
Yeah.
a big difference in those two. So like that's kind of why I'm asking, because
Yeah.
I know that a lot of times people are frustrated with the traditional,
Mm-hmm.
medical system,
Oh, yeah.
but they need to know there's people like you out there who actually are looking out for what's best for them.
Yeah. In a holistic standpoint,
Yeah,
and addressing all three. And so my advice actually would be that one of the things that individuals do, and I'm guilty of this sometimes, is you go to the closest person or you go to the person who's on your plan. And those individuals might not be,
the
even if
best.
they're considered holistic, right? Might not be able to be the best to deal with your particular problem. So, for example, today I contacted a holistic dentist. Okay. And one of the best questions that someone can ask to anyone that they are potentially interviewing to work with: what is your experience in treating blah, blah, blah? And what is your success rate? Those are the two key questions.
Maybe
Okay,
I'll add one more.
go ahead.
Do you have anybody I could talk to that had a similar problem that was
Oh,
hindered
yes.
by you?
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. Yes. Asking for referrals from those individuals. So again, that is exactly what I asked the receptionist at the holistic dental place. This is what I have going on. What is this person's experience and what is their success rate?
Yeah,
And
that's great.
yeah, and again, yes, can I speak to someone? And when they're like, oh no, confidentiality, you know, there are a ton of patients that I could give names to. It's almost like I used to I was a landlord. And when somebody said that they had no referrals, I'm like, you have no friends? Like no one can say you're a decent, like that's
Yeah.
pretty scary.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
and obviously, the other question is how much experience do you have, et cetera, et cetera. But, knowing the success rate, I think is really, really key. And, yeah, and giving people, a general, oh, well, it's 6 to 12 visits. A lot of therapists are now being told to market. It's going to be 8 visits.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I always kind of think of like people don't really care about the visits, they care about the results.
mhm,
So like sell the results, not the visits, because if you can
right.
help that person in 3,
Yeah,
it's no different than helping them in 12, other than they just got the same result in a shorter amount of time, and that's really
yeah,
what they care about.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay,
Some
so
people.
tell me how you ended up kind of like the foot, ankle, because I feel like there's some reason why you're starting there, and that's why you're treating that.
Right. Well, it had to do with a business issue where I was
Okay.
told I needed to niche.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So from a
Good old
business
business
mentor,
coach.
a good old business coach, you need to niche, you need to niche. And so I I chose the foot and ankle because it was, first of all, an area that I was teaching. I was teaching a balance enhancement and fall prevention class. And since most people don't fall when they're sitting, the feet have something to do with it. So I would treat and teach the foot and ankle. And as I did that, my knowledge about it really expanded, and my creativity really expanded. And again, having those foundational concepts that I had, from my first day of orthopedic PT school, which is alignment dictates function, frequency, flow, and force absorption. You need to have stability in order to have mobility, and release, realign, rebalance. Those were 3 things. First
Yeah, I'm
step.
familiar with the joint by joint approach, stability, mobility, all the way up the
Exactly.
body.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so, using that philosophy and applying all of the things that I learned throughout my career, and then looking at the foot, I felt it, first of all, there's a need, because in the US, most physical therapists, we don't have time to really focus on the foot. And then most um, podiatrists don't know rehab. And nor do they often treat naturally because there's no money there. They want to do
Got
the
it.
surgery and get the big bucks and be done in 15-minute consults and that kind of thing. They don't, you know, they don't look at maybe, nor do they even understand the consequences of the surgeries.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's why I decided on the foot and ankle. And
Okay.
now what I'm coming to realize is that for me, being more general, but a root cause specialist and the person to go to, if when you want results like yesterday, that is really what my specialty is. I just happen to get them mostly in the foot and ankle.
Okay, got it. Okay, so now let's go back to
Mhm.
our conversation about having flat feet.
Yes.
What somebody has flat feet, you said
Mhm.
there's it could be one of like 4 things, right?
Yes.
Um, so can you, I mean, just let's just play along and kind of
Sure.
pretend somebody else is
Yeah.
doing this.
So
So like what would
what
you do?
Yeah, so what I first share is that the root cause always, it's a compensated, what's called a compensated supinated foot,
Okay.
meaning that 9 times out of 10, and this is unless they have something like Elder Daniels or some sort of other
And I
connective.
used to twist my ankles all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. And so what happens is that when you were developing, you had a high arch. And when your feet came onto the ground, you weren't able to get your big toes down because they were so supinated. So
Got
the
it.
body compensated, because I believe the human body will do anything to get weight over the big toe, because
Okay.
it's our primary balancer. So even like elderly forward head posture, even like a lordosis or or even a kyphosis, it's all bringing the weight forward over the big toe, because a lot of times there's a lack of mobility in the midfoot, right?
Okay.
So what happens is that in the midfoot, the way that the foot is organized is that there's probably a compensation in the midfoot, and what manifests, or what I can see, is again one of four compensations. That is that the heel, right, moves into pronation, right, into a varum, what's called a varum, not a valgum. So that would mean that when you look at your foot from the back, the heel is going to be this way,
Yep. That's what mine
toward the
does.
inside. Okay. The second characteristic is that there's a bone that is called the navicular, and the navicular drops.
Okay.
Callus shifts, right? The heel pronates, and then sometimes even at the knee, the tibias internally rotate.
Yep. Mine do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So kind
So
of like knee knocking almost.
yeah. And so what happens is that if I take you out of any of those compensations, right, manually, when you're standing, your big toe will come off the ground.
Got it.
So
Okay.
the idea that makes it one of the more complicated, there's a couple of reasons why that diagnosis is particularly complicated, is number one, there are many compensations that you have to undo, and you have to concurrently address the root problem, which is getting the big toe on the ground. So you actually have to mobilize the big toe to get that down, and the forefoot and any midfoot issues that are causing that supination, and then correct the rear foot, which is the heel and the navicular bone, and
Got
move
it.
up the kinetic chain.
So, uh, big toe strengthening.
Yeah, and really it's more of an issue at the what's called the tarsometatarsal joint, which
Okay.
is higher up.
Okay.
So
Got it.
there's really there's no isolated muscle there. There
Right.
is isolated muscles for the big toe, and strengthening the big toe is one of the most important things that people can do, and getting pressure onto the big toe. So, for example, I sustained an injury once again, right? Kickboxing. I avulsed my big toe. Now, so I didn't put weight onto that foot, and I wasn't walking properly for a long period of time. Well, years later, because I never addressed that problem. Going downstairs, I sustained 2 osteocondylar fractures to my knee,
Okay.
which would
Wow.
have been surgery and 6 weeks non-weight bearing, not in my, I had just had a baby. It was not in my future timeline. So what I realized is that I wasn't putting weight on the big toe. Put the weight on the big toe, haven't had a problem since. It was 15 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
So
So
once again, addressing the root causes of the issue to make sure that everything is working properly, in order to restore alignment, which once again can help with force absorption, which
sure.
can work with sequential movement, right, through the kinetic chain, and offset any sort of pressure type injuries.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'll tell you the things that I felt like have had helped that the most is number
Mhm.
one, doing bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I say that is because I used to practice 30 minutes of posing a
Yeah.
day while I'm sitting there flexing my legs, and the way
Yes.
you have to like lift your insteps
That's
out.
right.
And so my legs were getting strengthened, in
Yes.
areas that I normally wouldn't, kind of the opposite, right? So that really helped. And then I figured out how to do ankle mobility,
Mhm.
footwork. I stopped spraining my ankles and
Yeah.
doing all those things, but I still noticed my shoes or they
Mm-hmm.
get worn out. So yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of programs and different stuff like that with like I don't know if you ever heard of cars or functional anatomy
Mm-mm.
training, but that's a lot of the foot, ankle, all those things. And so I've known that, but I just, I appreciate someone who's kind of like working their way up the body.
Right.
So it's really cool. But like, so do you teach other people or other practitioners how to do what you're doing, or do you primarily just work with the consumer?
Both. Both.
Okay, so talk a little bit, like there's a lot of practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
What could you help them do with what you're teaching?
Yeah. So right now I have classes on the forefoot, which is the 33 joints that are located from the beginning of the arch to the toes. And even when I was trained by one of the best physical therapists in the world, he did not touch those 33 joints.
Okay.
So they are an integral part of balance. They are impactful, certainly with any problem up the kinetic chain. Rear foot dysfunctions like Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, all of those things very well can be, ankle sprains,
Okay.
huge problems with mobility in the forefoot. And again, it's working in what I call a triplanar approach, which means that I treat in all three planes of motion,
Motion. Yep.
not just the sagittal plane and the frontal plane, which is how many manual therapists are treated. Also, the programs are in weight bearing because when the foot hits the ground, everything changes.
Yeah. When you add load, then when
Exactly,
things go
exactly.
under stress, then
And yes, and very few people have a problem in non-weight bearing. So
okay.
unless they are, someone, and once again, going back to my training, most things were done in non-weight bearing. And massage, usually non-weight bearing. So again, making it functional, and I call it corrective functional therapy. And those are the
Nice.
courses, and they can be found on my website,
Okay.
dlwalkerconsultants.com, as well as an opportunity. So there's a section for professionals, a section for individuals, and a section for teams and organizations who might want to do preventative work with their athletes for, obviously knee problems, ankles, et cetera,
Yeah.
because
Any of these kids playing sports year round, the same sport.
well, yes, yeah, or just in general. I mean, the foot, there's no one really with a healthy foot that's in modern society, and I think it has to do with the fact that we're put in shoes at a very young age, and we ambulate or walk on flat terrain, so we don't get that subtle mobilization that the cave people did or indigenous people do with with very, very thin soled shoes.
So okay, so let's talk about maybe a habit somebody could do to help maybe strengthen their foot or give
Mhm.
them, some mobility. Would it be walking around barefoot for a certain amount of time a day, or like what would you
Yeah.
recommend?
It really depends on the foot. You have a pronated foot, you need to core strengthen, right? Because again, the foot is not
The
used to
problem.
like toss salad. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's really for balance and walking, right?
Okay.
And once again, you need to have stability in order to have mobility. When somebody has a pronated foot, they're hypermobile in certain joints, like the heel, like the navicular, but they are hypomobile in other ways. So it really does depend on the individual. It depends on the foot. And what is really interesting in what I've found and what I do is that I really look at the fascia. So when
Okay.
somebody's having a problem, like say somebody pronates, so in non-weight bearing, you don't pronate at all, right? Let's just say. You put the foot down, and then as you stand up, the minute you pronate, I can identify the connective tissue that is causing that fascial pull, that is then causing that dysfunction.
Wow. Okay.
So I do that a lot with bunions, and I do that also with hammer toes.
Okay.
Provided that they haven't gotten so far. Same thing with something like sesamoiditis or an arthritis of the toe, a hallux limitus, because again, it's just the symptom is either pain or decreased motion. Well, what's the cause? And again, the answer really comes from looking at the entire kinetic chain and doing a thorough evaluation on individuals, and then providing them with a comprehensive program that will address what their particular needs are.
Okay. I love it. Okay. So I'm a health professional practitioner. I want to find out more about you. Where do I go?
And dlwalkerconsultant.com.
Okay. And then I'm someone who's just looking to improve my life, but some of the foot things that you mentioned, I might have, or someone has, they go to the same place and there's a practitioner one and
individuals as well as, as well as teams and organizations that might want to bring me in to teach. And like I said, most of the I do have DIY programs, and then I also offer done with you solutions. And right now I have a initial strategy consultation for $79.
Okay. And if you guys are listening to this, all you got to do is just go to the show notes. You can click on the link and it'll take you directly there.
Yep.
So, okay. Sure. Well, tell us, in 1 minute or less, like what's next? What's the big thing you're working on?
Oh, making life your exercise.
Okay.
So it's about daily practice and mindfulness, in your daily life, that you are conscious, because you don't need to go to the gym, right? In order to be healthy and functional, right? What you need to do, what I feel is more important, is that you move your body properly. And there's a right and a wrong way to sit, to stand, to breathe, to drive a car, even to de-stress. So for example, to swallow, somebody might be having digestive problems. It could be their neck, looking at the alignment, because again, when you can restore optimal alignment, everything works properly, including those core muscles, because they're then able to fire when needed, right? Because of the length tension ratio, which I think you might be familiar with. So yeah, I think that is a little bit down the road again. And so many people have stress in their lives and depression, and that can lead to so many difficulties in their bodies. And really looking at the deeper crust of the problem.
Okay. Well, hey, I want to thank you for being on the episode today. You've definitely, brought a lot of value. So I appreciate that. And thank you so much. If you guys want to find out more about DL, obviously you can go to the show notes. But she's got some amazing stuff she's doing. And it sounds like if you're a practitioner, you could really learn a lot from her and, possibly add this into your business.
Yeah. And courses are certified for CEUs in a number of states.
Okay. Great. Well, hey, if you want to be part of our habit-based lifestyle community, we actually have a private Facebook group called Habit-Based Lifestyle and Business Secrets, where we teach you how to upgrade your life and your business. And you guys can go ahead and go to the show notes. You can click on the link. You can get added into that group. We hope you guys have an amazing week. If you have any questions, you can always reach out. Email me, jesse@habitbasedlifestyle.com. Until next episode, have a great day.
You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewell. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.